Shazam, as I like to say. Hello and welcome, everybody. I guess, I'm like 13 seconds early here, but it is 2 p.m. in the eastern part of the United States of America. Here in Mexico City, where I am, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And my guest for today on the eLearn Hotseat is LaTarshia Wooten. LaTarshia, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember where are you sitting? I feel like I want to say Ohio, but I don't know why.
I don't know why either. I'm actually in Richmond, Virginia. Um,
Virginia. I mean,
yeah.
Ohio, Virginia. Come on. Like one's
I
shaped like one's shaped
mean,
like a triangle, the other one's not shaped like anything. So
yeah.
LaTarshia Wooten is my guest for today on the eLearn Hot Seat. She's a learning experience designer. She is someone who is a 30 under 30 selectee or anointee or awardee. I'm not sure exactly what the word is there in 2021. She's a heck of a lot of fun as well. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that if you're watching us live on LinkedIn, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, we do invite you to join the conversation with us. So, you can throw something in the chat there if you have a question, if you have an observation, if you have a comment, you want to tell LaTarshia how awesome she is, because she is, that is welcome as well. And if you're listening to the recording of this on our podcast feed, you can actually come back to LinkedIn or any of these other platforms and join as well. So you could also put a comment in. But without further ado, I want to welcome you, LaTarshia, to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So give us the 30 seconds of who you are, kind of a little bit about your background and whatnot before we dive into this, this story of becoming a learning experience designer.
All right, 30 seconds. Okay, let's go. I am a learning experience designer. And just to kind of sum me up, I like to create some fun, engaging courses. I like to create things that is a little bit challenging for most, just because I'm like, why not? Let's push the envelope. Um, how can we get more digestible, engaging learning for our learners so they can have fun too while they're taking trainings? So yeah, that sums me up.
Very cool. Well, then let's start there. One of the reasons why I was intrigued by your story, other than the fact that you were in this 30 under 30 piece, I want to save that till later though, because that's kind of another story in itself. How did you get into learning and development? How did you get into learning design? Because I know that you didn't come here through that sort of more traditional path of being an educator. So tell us that story first.
Yeah, so I actually got introduced in college. So I went to JMU and my minor was educational media, and they have a really good education program. But
Mhm.
the minor was really focused on like instructional design. So I learned about the different principles. I learned about the different technology, which is my strong suit. Like I love a good learning tool. And we can talk more about that later. But that is when I got introduced to it. I didn't know it was something like this existed. I mean, yes, I knew like you can become a teacher, professor, like those types of careers, but I never knew about instructional designers or learning experience designers or just those who are in learning specialists and all these different terms or pathways. But leaving college, I went more into the marketing field. My major was communication comms. So, like, I really enjoyed that aspects. But as I was working in that field, I was like, something's not adding up for me particularly. So then I started working for a small accounting training firm, and there is where I learned about the world of design, e-learning. It really opened my eyes to what could be. Like I was creating educational videos to creating 1 hour long e-learning modules and various authoring tools. I was using Storyline and Camtasia. So it was just a lot of fun having this outlet to be creative. And also, it's just really cool seeing how people enjoy the work that you do, right?
Mhm.
And
Can
so
I can I
that's,
put you can I put a just I want to dive in there because there's something that's intriguing about your path that I want to know where it's at in your brain. You started as a marketer in a marketing universe, and then you found online learning, you found e-learning, you found so how much do those two universes collide for you? Because, and I'm gonna lead the witness here in that This is one of the things Chris and I, we talk about it in our office hours. We've talked about it with other people in the podcast about teachers, instructors, professors. Usually they make great learning material, but they're terrible at marketing, and they're terrible at selling why this is awesome. Right. So do you find that to be an important conversation in your?
Definitely. So I might have like skipped over the part when I transitioned from a marketing project specialist. The role I went into was a digital marketing and learning specialist. So it married the two very nicely. So not only was I creating the courses, I was marketing them as well, or assisting with that aspect. So like for a DMLS at my previous company, you had to do everything from, you know, creating like the accountants would give us these storyboards and we would design them and put them in the authoring tool, and then we would then market them, right? And so I did contact lists, I did landing pages, I wrote blogs. So I am a firm believer, like you have to market your training, right? Especially for those where the training is not required, right? But it's still good quality training. You have to figure out how are you going to reach your learners? How are you going to market it to them in a fun, engaging way? Because let's be honest, a lot of people who aren't in our fear, they're not jumping up like, yes, I want to go take this hour-long training. So you have to make it engaging for them. You have to make it fun for them. Like, and you also have to explain what it is and what it's, I'm getting tongue-tied, but
What's
like
in it for them?
yes, essentially. You know, and that's a very important thing, whether you're trying to get them to change a behavior, or if you're just trying to make them aware of something, a new concept, a new way of doing things. It's just important to find what is going to motivate them to complete this training, you know, especially like I mentioned, like training that's not necessarily required, that they have to take each year for licenses and things like that. So it's just kind of important that you know what your audience want and market those courses or training materials towards that.
Fantastic. So rounding out, so now you've gone from you thought communications and marketing was cool to being a marketer to being a marketing, you know, being a designer, digital learning designer,
digital marketing, yeah.
digital marketing learning designer. And you were working for a small company.
Yes.
Can you give us an, like, what is it, 100 people, 1,000 people? What's a small
It
company
was
to you?
12.
12 people. That's a small company. That's a small
yeah.
But that's
it was about 12
in my honestly, that's my sweet spot. I like anything below 20, like that's, I thrive. Yeah, it's fantastic. Nice.
But yeah, it was 12 people. There were accountants who created the content, and then you had the DMLS who were we were the ones that was actually producing like the e-learning pieces, the videos. People on the team, they were doing the webinars and different things like that. I really enjoyed my time at that company because it taught me so much. Because as you can imagine, with 12 people, you have to be a jack of all trades. And I was able to have my hand in all the different cookie jars. And with such a small, close team, you know, collaboration was so, like, I can't stress how beneficial it was. Like, it's 12 people. So you can only imagine, like, you can just get around the table, you can throw ideas around, you can figure out what's working, what's not working. You can also help. One of the things that I really enjoy is teaching others what I know. And so there I got the opportunity to train and teach and like share my knowledge. And beyond that, they gave me the opportunity to start speaking at conferences and stuff. So
Nice.
it was really a great opportunity for me.
And was it were you physically present, or was it a remote company? You said get around the table, so
Yes, it was in person. It was it's a local company within my in my area. So it was in person. All of us literally in the open space, and we had this huge table. And I talk a lot with my hands, so I do apologize. But we had this huge table, and you know, we could collaborate on different things.
super cool. So tell me about like, was it corporate education focused? Were you doing things for higher ed, K through 12? Like what was the specialty that organization focused on?
Yeah, so the specialty for that was accounting training, really targeted for accountants solely.
Accountants. Wow, that is
Yes.
niche. Holy smokes.
Yes. So as I mentioned, the accountants on our that worked there, they would do these storyboards, and then they would transfer that to our team, and we would be the ones to make it really like design it and make it colorful and add the interactions. I'm really big on interactions, but not to the point where it's like overwhelming. But I do think having a course that has a little bit more than just click, 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 or reading 5 billion pages or something isn't going to really reach any learner, in my opinion. And so adding these small interactive pieces can really make the course pop even more.
And so were you designing for courses that this company was then producing and selling to accountants, or were you designing them for accounting firms, or how did that work?
It's a little bit of both, really. So essentially, once the course was created, they would then either sell it to like individuals, like they have an LMS, and you can take a course there, or you could, or they work directly with companies. So it was or accountant firms. It was a really cool experience to kind of see, especially like when you read feedback from people who taken a course like an individual, and they're like, oh, I really like this from your course, and that's like really cool and really motivating, because sometimes in the L&D field we never really get direct feedback from um like, how can I say this? You get feedback obviously through surveys and things like that, but these people actively went out and purchased something. You know what I mean? And then they leave a feedback, right? When you work at a bigger corporation, or really any corporation, right? You get those feedback like after you complete a course. Can you let us know? Here's a survey, fill it out. That we definitely get. But sometimes when you think about it from the standpoint of this particular company I was working at, we were selling it. So people actively search for this. They actively came here. And when you read those type of feedbacks, it's just kind of cool, because like they pay for this. You know what I mean? Where I'm at now, I do most of my work is internal training. So yes, I do get feedback, but it's more so like we kind of had to, voluntold them to do it. It's a little bit different. But I still think, nevertheless, feedback is feedback, but it still was really cool for me to see. Especially that was my first experience creating something and things like that.
I thought it was, I used to know, or not know, a friend of mine used to work for a very big travel company, and he's not in the learning business, but he's in the product management business. But that was one of the things he said was one of his most exciting things was this company was big enough where his team would, make a tweak to the sales process, or like the cart process, or they would make a tweak to a banner or whatever. And he would be able to see within a day, literally like hundreds of thousands of responses, and like that kind of instant feedback. This is a really big website. And I kind of just wanted to marinate on that for a second, that no matter what area of education that you're in, I'm a professor as well. I get to teach one class every year at American University. Like getting that feedback is that's one of the one of the special sauces of why you continue to do it, right? Because you see learners light up, or you say, wow, this had enough value that they took it home, or they feedback to you and they're like, wow, I kind of got this, but it led me to that. So that's really cool stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think feedback is how we get better, right? Like why keep creating something that people aren't responding to? You know what I mean? Or they're responding in a way where they didn't receive the necessary content or message that you were trying to get them to receive. So like I do think feedback is valuable, whether it's peer feedback from designer to designer, or where it's feedback where you're getting it from your learners or your stakeholders. It doesn't really matter. Feedback, in my mind, everyone is trying to achieve the same goal, right? To create amazing training that is sticky, right? That's going to change a behavior that helps either your business or help you to learn more. It doesn't really matter, but feedback is key to doing that. You can't like close that road or that avenue, because then you're not going to grow as a person, and your learners aren't going to get the your best self, because you're not being open to that. So really big on feedback, really big on trying to make sure the work that I'm creating is having impact on my learners, or if I'm assisting fellow designers, like I want them to be able to come to me and ask for help. And I love when they give me feedback and like, oh, LaTarshia, the way you explain this worked really well. I'm like, I'm so glad to hear that. So yeah, definitely feedback is definitely key.
As a reminder, everybody, we are live here with LaTarshia Wooten. Speaking of feedback, if you want to give us some feedback, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of those work. You know, throw a comment in the chat, throw a question in the chat, and we'll be happy to respond to it. In a small company, and I'm doing this purposely because I want to juxtapose it where you're going now. What was the biggest challenge for you? In that 12-person company, you said jack of all trades, everybody could get around the table. It was dynamic. It was agile. Like what were the things that you were kind of like made you tear your hair out or bang your head against the wall or, you didn't like?
Well, you kind of answered it. It's 12 people. And then my team was really small. So of those 12 people, we had 3, I'm not sure, but it was a small number of us. And so as you can imagine, when work picked up, you only have a little bit of people. So that was probably one of the things, right? When you work at a bigger company, you have a lot more resources compared to if you work at such a small company. So we were editing our own audio, we were doing the recordings, we were creating the videos. And while it may seem, even though it was one of the things that was a struggle just because it's 12 people, or let me speak directly about my team, 4, 5 people, 3 people, whatever the number was at the time, it was still like, even though it was like a little bit of a struggle, it was still my favorite part, because guess what? I was able to learn all of these different tools, all of these different ways of creating content that I didn't have before. So while at times it was quite stressful, I'm like, oh my Lord, that's a lot of stuff we have to do. At the same time, it was like, I'm kind of excited because I'm about to like play with all the toys. I'm about to play with everything. So I think it just depends on your perspective on things. Yes, definitely times that were stressful. I'm like, this is an hour-long e-learning module I have to create. And that it can sometimes feel intimidating, but it's also the opportunity, the way I saw it, as learning and growing my skill set. So it was cool, but that was probably like one of the bigger things. I'm like, oh, that was a lot.
Then which happened first? Did you enter into and were awarded the 30 under 30 prize first, and then you made the transition to the company right now, or did the transition happen first?
Transition happened first.
Super cool. Then let's talk about that transition. So now you've transitioned to, let's just say, a much larger organization. I think you probably onboard 12 people every second in your organization. We unfortunately, just so everybody knows, we can't talk specifically about the brand itself, but let's just say is it Fortune 100 or is it 500, 200? I don't know.
I think Fortune 500.
Okay, let's say 500. But everybody, if you're in the corporate world, you probably have interacted or worked with this organization. You're not working for them as a learning experience designer. What's your initial like, holy smokes, this is the deep end of the pool? Or it's like, oh yeah, of course, I know exactly what I'm doing. Or like, just give us like, what's the initial, I've been here 6 months to a year impression.
It's more so like, holy crap, I'm in the deep end. That is where I'm at. No, I say that to say is the team that I'm on now, they are some powerhouses, okay? Like, I am surrounded by such amazing talent all day, every day. And I'm just like, how in the world did I end up here? Did you guys maybe, sent that offer to the wrong person? My name, it's not very common, but it could happen. But no, it was such a shock. Literally, when that transition happened and I was told like they were offering, I was like, me? It's LaTarshia with the R and an I in it. They were like, no, we mean you. I'm like, okay, you sure? It's a capital T too. That's important, okay? And they're like, yeah, we're sure. I'm like, okay. And so the transition happened and I was very like immediately like that imposter syndrome, that you feel a little bit overwhelmed because I'm like, I'm little old LaTarshia, right? This is a big corporation, and when I found out and I learned about the people on this team and the talent, I'm like, you did what? Oh, okay, you what? And that's how I was reacting to like some of the people. I was just like, this is mind blowing. But it was also so exciting because I'm like, I am about to learn so much. I thought I was doing something before, but I'm about to be doing something real. Like, I'm really excited.
Give us a size. Give us a sense of the scale. Like before, at your smaller company, you'd produce a learning and it would affect, or be seen by what, dozens, hundreds of people. And now, what's the scale difference?
Thousands.
Mm,
You know, like the some of the work that we're doing affects thousands. Um, and that's really cool, right?
mhm,
And it's kind of interesting because, like I said, the previous company was a lot of external, right? It was external, but this company, the work that I do is internal.
mm.
And so it's really cool to like think about how that is impacting, the business, and being able to interact directly with my learners compared to the external. Like I said, I would get that feedback. Oh, this course was really cool. I love this fun element. This one, I could really reach out to my learner. I could set up time and be like, hey, can I get your feedback on this? Are we going in the right direction? Are we not? And that's one of the main, I think, benefits, and really really cool, because like I'm creating the training for you. So I want it to be beneficial for you. So therefore your opinion should matter on how it shapes. So yeah, it's definitely a whirlwind.
Do you
Imposter
feel
syndrome is real.
Yeah, sure. Do you, and we never get over it, believe me, I still have it. I think we all do. They write books about it. But, have you found there's a critical difference, and maybe there's not, is a real honest question, between serving external clients and what you would consider internal clients? Are the processes the same? Are the, you know yeah, just let me leave it there. Like, what are there any critical gaps or differences in that you would see in serving those two different types of clients an experienced designer?
Yes and no. No, because essentially as a designer, our sole goal, regardless of what type of learner it is to help enable them to be better.
Mhm.
Yes, because it's a little bit more pressure, I feel like, on the internal, just for me personally. I'm speaking for those who are listening, I'm speaking from my experience, and
Mhm.
mind you, imposter syndrome is real. Um, from my experience, like when I'm with internal, I feel like the work that I do impacts the work that they do. You know what I mean? Like, and if my work isn't the best I can do, then maybe their work won't be as good as it should be, and then that affects the entire business. But mind you, I work for a big company, and you just gotta kind of keep the, when I say whole, I don't mean like whole, but you know what I mean. um
Yeah, sure.
and so that is how I see it. Not that I think you should structure, different things. Obviously, it's a little bit different for internal. A lot of times it's required work, so I don't have to necessarily, a lot of marketing isn't around it. It's awareness mainly. Like, hey, this course is out. You need to complete it by this day. External, you're kind of waiting for someone to come and like find your website, find your courses, and then taking it that way. But yeah, so that's kind of how I see it. It's a yes and no, because I think you should
Mm.
really put the same emphasis that you're putting for internal on external. It just internal, just have a little bit more weight to it, in my opinion, because the work that they do, because I'm creating training for them to go out and do their job effectively, which would then help the business be more effective.
So a question that pops into my head. So we put on something called the eLearn Success Series. In February, we had something called the Design Session, and our very first speaker, um, Dr. Jane Bozarth, she's the head of research at the Learning Guild, right? And her talk was about why what we do matters, especially as learning experience designers. And the talk focused around what you produce actually has effect, and it affects, lots and lots of people's lives. So for every, I'm kind of wondering, do you ever stop and pause within your team to think about, hey, we're going to be training this group internally, or, this goes over here, but then they're affecting, in your case, literally millions of clients who use, your service. Is that ever a conversation? Is that ever like really something that people put on the table, or is it discussed in any way, like, overtly?
I think it just depends on like the team. Like for example, we talk about the impact. Impact is
Mhm.
very important. Like what is the impact it's going to have?
Mm.
Um, and I think in that sense, like having that understanding that the work that you do, while it may feel like small in the grand scheme of things, what is the impact that it's going to have? And a lot of our training tries to focus on that. Like, what is the impact this will have on this team that will then result to helping our customers, right? What is the impact this training is going to have? And then that's where that feedback comes back in, right?
Hmm.
That's why it's so close for us to stay close to our learners and making sure we're getting their feedback. They're being part of it as we build, because it's important, because they're on the front line. They know what their customers need. They know what's happening. And because of that valuable information, we can better think about the impact that our work is doing. So we do have those conversations like, hey, is this course going to be impactful? Is it not? Oh, how can we make it more impactful? Let's talk to the frontline leaders. Like, that is something we definitely do.
Excellent. What's the, I like to say, like, like, go back to that question about challenges. Now that you've transitioned into this ginormous organization, moving aside the imposter syndrome, like, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing as a new learning experience designer in this environment? And I'll just leave it there. Like, what are the things that pop into your head or that frustrate you?
Well, not necessarily frustrate me, but like, for example, knowledge. I
Mm.
only know what I know. And I am fairly new to this company. I'm fairly new to actually creating the content myself, right? Previous company, I didn't do that because the accountants did it. Here, you know, crazy thing, they were like, hey, we need this. I'm like, what, you want me to write? Okay, you want me to write that? Okay, let's take a moment. Um, and that is one of the things. What don't I know? Right. So I had to spend a lot of time, like, I talked to a lot of fellow designers. I did a lot of research and um like online, and figure out, okay, what does this mean, and trying to like go through the pieces, also pulling back from my college education, like, all right, LaTarshia is there, we gotta like wipe off the cobwebs, let's get like think about that. And so that's one of them. The knowledge is like, I don't know what I don't know. How can I gain that additional information so that I can be the best that I can be? Another challenge is, it is really big. This, like, it's a huge company, and so when I come in from a 12 to a big, it's a lot of red tape that I
Oh,
didn't think of.
oh, yeah.
I, I was just like, wait, I have to put in a process for this and this and then I'm like, whoa. I mean,
Mhm.
literally, I was in the office with the CEO at my previous company. So it's a different type of feel, like, and navigating the different teams and understanding your stakeholders and working with um, vendors, like all of these different things that I just didn't have previous experience with. That I was just like, okay. And so, like, that, I will say, is another one of the challenges that I'm experiencing. But since being there for a little bit over a year, I feel like I have grown so much. Like,
Mm.
I am in awe. Like, when I first started, I was always like so nervous about each thing. But now I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's go through the process. Like, because a lot of times as designers or learning designers, we have processes we need to follow. We need to make sure that our content, our learning objectives, like all of these different pieces really work well together, and we're able to test it and really get feedback. Like, those, we have processes we follow. And so now that I feel more comfortable in the different processes that this company has, I feel like, okay, while I still have like that voice, like, am I doing this right? I feel more empowered to make decisions, to reach out to this stakeholder, to like do all these different
Mm.
things that has to get done to get the content that I need. But yeah, it's definitely a change. I will say the processes, not the process, but the red tape is real. I didn't know that.
Sure. Yeah.
All my
Mhm.
previous companies I've ever worked for were fairly on the smaller side. So I feel like I skipped the medium. Like, I should have went like it was
Sure.
supposed to be something in between. You know what I mean? Like, I skipped over. I'm like, whoa, okay.
So for those of our listeners that are out there, they're instructional design and experience design. It's literally one of the hottest professions in the education sector, even today, right? And it has been coming up for quite a while now. Give us a sense, like, what's the difference between your pre-planning and your timelines and your just sort of your horizon in both the situations, right? For a small company, it was like, hey, you could get a project, bam, okay, we're going to do it, and it'll be, we know we can do it in 90 days or whatever. And now it's like, hey, wait, we have to actually plan that corporate training a year out, and then we're going to, like, is it that dramatic, or how? Like, give us a sense.
No, I don't think. I mean, so depending on the project, I would say that. But sometimes you need to crank just as much. Like it's just the same. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta. Sometimes it's faster, um, and that's one thing I guess I should have mentioned, like the speed. Like I thought I was fast at, especially like e-learning and programming. I'm like, oh, I can do this. Like that's my bread and butter. I can
Mm-hmm.
stay in a tool all day, every day. But coming here, they're like, oh, we need this and this. And I'm like, wait, you're snapping faster than I can type. I can't keep up. And so you definitely have to learn how to pace yourself. So even though there are processes we have to follow, you have to then create like your calendar or your mapping for how you work
Mm,
within the time frame they provide for you. So I mean, I think it just depends on the business. I think it depends on the corporation, the size, like the projects. It varies because sometimes they're like, oh, we have this amount of time. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And then sometimes they're like, we got this amount of time. I need this in 3 days. That's a little bit on the exaggerated side, but you get the point. Like it's
sure.
just like very fast, and you got to keep up with it.
Mm,
But I mean, I think that's just how it is in this particular field. Like I've spoken to designers where they're like, I had 4 months to create this, and others are like, oh, I had 2 days to write this job aid or do
sure.
this. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
It just depends.
Sure. I want to give a shout out to both Brian Harris and Andrea Apolinario. Apologize for butchering her name there, for joining us here and putting some feedback into our chat as well. Brian's here talking about that quote that you just had about knowing what you don't know and giving yourself the space to be okay with that. That's fantastic. I encourage everybody else who's listening right now, if you have a comment, if you just have some feedback for us, we'd love to get that. If you have a question, especially about this next piece that I'm going to ask LaTarshia about as well. LaTarshia, what I want to know is, how did you get here? And this kind of goes to that imposter syndrome piece where so many of us who are in the education business now didn't start as educators. Is that a thing? Do we care? Does that give you it could give you a certain edge, right? I mean, that you're kind of coming from the outside looking in. Are there any limps that you found that you have because of that, or whatnot?
Um, I think if you have like the education to like back, that's important. That's very important. For me personally, while I did have some understanding when I was in college, I didn't have the full picture that some who go the traditional route, they get, I don't have a master's, like they get their master's, they further got like be immersed in this field. However, I will say, even though I didn't go that route, I still had a great time on the route that I did take because those unique experiences for me shaped me. I'm able to provide a different perspective. For example, I was a comms major. Like I feel that I can communicate, I can be conversational in my language, in my content. Um, and then along the way, I picked up tools, right? I love tools. I can speak about learning tools all day, all day. I even share I know some people share unpopular opinions when it comes to the tool versus the content.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't think it necessarily matters how you got in. It matters what you do once you are in. Are you continuously being um, an avid learner, right? Are you continuously reaching out, looking for mentors, growing your craft? Are you continuously staying up to date on what's new? Are you going to conferences, or are you listening to podcasts to continue to craft these new skill sets that you have? What are you doing now that you're in this field? How are you contributing to this community to help it grow? Is what I kind of think of it. So while you may not have taken the traditional route, and honestly, I haven't met too many people who have taken the traditional route. But if you didn't, that's okay. It's okay. You're here now, right? You're in this career now. You're working the job that you're working. You're doing the work, but it's not just enough to do that. You have
Mm.
to continue to learn. I'm always looking for new ways to do something. As I said, tools are my fave. So I'm always looking like what's new, what's out there, what can I play with?
What's your favorite tool? Come on, just say it. What's your favorite tool?
Any authoring tool really. Any
Articulate.
like
What is it? What is it?
I like Articulate. I like Camtasia. I will say I like Captivate as well. We
Ooh,
don't
okay.
use it too much at my current company, but I do like some of the features it has. I played around with others, like online authoring tools. Um, I will say though, tools that I don't particularly enjoy is ones with a lot of click paths. Like a lot of times, like I said, it's very fast paced. So when I have to click 1,000 different places, I'm quick to be like, I experienced this tool. It was an experience I learned, but I will not return. Um, but and I
Well then,
definitely had a few of those in my life. But I think that's what I say. So if you're transitioning and you're a teacher, or if you're transitioning and you have a marketing experience like I did, or regardless of where you are, maybe you are working for a company and it's very skill based, and you was like, you know, I'm working here and I see this problem and I decided to create a course on something. It doesn't matter how you enter, in my opinion, mind you, my my opinion. It's just what it matters what you do once you get here,
hmm
right? So, for example, the example I just used, maybe that person created a training. He's never created a training, or she never created a training before, but they did it. That's a great time to get that feedback. That's a great time to do some research. That's a great time to figure out how you can test those who are taking your training. That's a great time to sign up for a class. That's a great time to listen to some learning podcasts. Like, it really does matter what happens once you are in the field.
Mm, excellent. I want to also thank Brian Harris once again for that. You know, he heard you loud and clear about that. It matters what you do now that you're in. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, I'm admittedly I come from the entrepreneur universe, and you know, it's always, you know, you say yes and then you figure it out, right? But it's once you get the contract, once you get the gig, once you get the job, whatever it is, it's are you going to deliver and actually put up, right? Because if you don't, then you're gonna have to shut up, right? So it's like it's you got to keep doing it, and you know, then keep growing. Fantastic. Um, before we move on, we actually have a question here from Andrea that I want to get to, but a follow up to that, when you're talking about you're a tool person, you're this and that. How trendy is the learning that you're designing now, especially in this super large corporation that you're in right now? I mean, the talk of the town these days is micro learning, you know, learning the flow of work, these kinds of things. So what, you know, do you find that, you know, you're the type of learning you're designing is following any certain trend right now, or is it, you know, staying a little bit more standard, sort of, hey, look, here it is in our wiki or in our or LMS, and go find it, that kind of thing? What kind of insights can you give there?
I think it's a little bit more on the traditional right now, but I think it's moving to more trendy. Um, I think the newer designers that are starting to join the team are starting to test that, right? Like for example, I am I attend a lot of I've attended conferences in my past, right? I've spoken at conferences, um, and they give me just as much anxiety as speaking anywhere else. But I've spoken at them, I've taken them, and then what do? You take that knowledge back to your team. And so I think as you know, we continue to do that and the team continues to evolve, the more our learning will evolve. But also, as our learners start to change, our learning will evolve too, because we need to meet them where they are. Um, so that's one of the things I will say. We're traditional in the sense where we do, you know, they go find their courses or we assign their courses in that manner. But I do think hopefully in the future we can be more into meeting them where they are, you know, in their moment of need, figuring out other methods besides courses. And I think that'd be exciting, because one of the things that I constantly say, I'm like, maybe everything doesn't need to be a course, you
Mm,
know?
yeah.
Maybe it needs to just be a guided training, you know, where you guide them through, they see examples, or maybe it's something, you know, they just need to learn this particular skill. Maybe it's just a quick video, or it's a it's I just want to stress that sometimes, you know, I've seen training from where someone is like, hey, read this 20-page guide and you will learn this. And I'm like, no, I won't. Not today, because that is way too long and it's just reading. I've been places where it's like gamified and I'm competing and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I don't know. Like, I'm just in it. And I think we have to find a balance between that. So I definitely say we, at this current company, we're a little bit more like e-learning. We use Articulate, we do videos and things like that. But hopefully, eventually, I won't say hopefully because I can already start seeing the change. But eventually, we'll be more into STEMs and like all of that fun stuff that I think a lot of people, like our learners, are itching to get.
And then one final follow-up before we get to Andrea's question is, one of the things, again, that we've really discovered, and it's definitive now over the last 2 years, how much content are you producing original now, and how much are you borrowing from or repurposing or reusing, right? So I'm just, one of the things like learning in the flow of work or learning those immediate things, like you said, let me Google that for you. There, with all of the resources that we have out there, with open education resources, with YouTube, with, other creators out there, are you able to do that? Or does everything have to be, like it has to be original, created within your team because it's in the corporate umbrella?
More so that just because we are a company where we have to train our learners on particular things, right? Products and
So
stuff
it's
like
like
that.
click, 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 and here's a new product. Here's the benefits of it, that kind of stuff.
Yes and no. It's more so like, for example, something new is happening or coming, right? We need to let our learners know about that. Mine is internal training, right? So because it's internal, it's really customized in that nature. And I don't mean customized like, oh, we're doing customization, all that. I mean like it's tailored to that topic, that product. It's tailored to something in particular. If I feel like if it was an external, right, you're selling it to the masses outside of your, then I feel like those outside resources can definitely be beneficial. You know what I mean? You can go to YouTube, you can add resources from other companies and like kind of create like your own like learning path or curriculum, whatever you want to call it. But when you're focusing on like internal and you're focusing on solely on your products, I feel like you have to be a little bit more tailored. Like I can't
Sure.
exactly go out and find training on a product that this company created.
Sure. Especially when it's something new, right? Like somebody else saying it, they're not gonna do that. Sure. So I feel like this is going to be a great transition into like kind of the last part of our conversation here about the 30 under 30 experience. But Andrea has the question about, do you have any advice for a university instructor who would like to join a tech company, specifically one of the bigger ones, which we cannot mention? As mentioned earlier, marketing herself is not a strong suit. So she's like a typical, I wouldn't say it's a typical teacher. It really depends. If you're a drama teacher, you're probably a pretty good marketer. But let's say you're a physics teacher. No. But do you have any advice for somebody who wants to maybe break into this universe, or change careers, pivot, however you want to say it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this, but reminder is coming from me, so please research. But I
I don't know.
personally think
Jennifer here says, LaTarshia a gem. She understands how to reach and engage learners. Watch out. I think you got some fans.
Hi, Jen. I personally, for a university instructor, right? I've actually had people reached out to me on LinkedIn a lot asking about my transition. I guess they see my profile. They're like, wait, you were a marketing project specialist. How did you get here? It's just a weird pathway that kind of happened. But I personally, what I've been suggesting to people is, one, is if you're an instructor, what are you passionate about, right? What is something that you are super excited about that you think others would benefit from? Once you have that, I would start creating a portfolio around that. Start branding yourself towards the content and training you want to create. Teachers and instructors, in my opinion, have transferable skills into L&D. They're not necessarily always going to be like apples to apples, but I do strongly believe like you know how to create training. It's just it's just the way you think about how you create training, in my opinion. For example, if you were to create a portfolio, you can this is where I say once you get into the field, that's when you need to like continue to work. why not create something that's engaging, like learn how to use a video tool where you walk someone through a concept, or learn how to use Rise, which is a very easy to use program. It's a rapid programming tool. Or I've even spoken to other instructors like, oh, I took a Vion, which is a video software. I took a Vion course and I'm learning how to do these cool videos that teach different concepts. You can even play off the professor like approach, like where you're in the video and you're teaching this concept. I think a portfolio would be very helpful. So that way, future employers can see how your skills transfer over into an LED position or instructional designer position at a corporate level. I will also suggest, one of the things that I've been telling people is to find the companies that you're looking to work for. Try to find like recruiters, or speak to, if you know someone within a particular, like another designer that's at that company, speak to them, get their insight, really start to really build up your network. And one thing that people always tell me that is super important is branding. I am horrible at branding. When people told me that, I was like, my name's LaTarshia Wooten. That is my brand. I am LaTarshia.
Oh, no, you got a capital T there. Come on.
I do have a capital T, but it's important when you're making that transition. I think mine was a little bit different because I went from a marketing project specialist to a digital marketing and learning specialist. I just basically was able to move my marketing skills over, but then grow on the learning side because it paired well. So I do think that it can happen. I know plenty of people where I currently work that were teachers that are now LED. So it definitely can happen. So to kind of sum up my long rant is a portfolio, figure out what, the content you want to do. Branding, how do you want yourself to be seen towards the future employers? And 3, networking, really trying to get into these learning spaces, listening to podcasts, but more than that, be active in these learning spaces. Share your input, because one of the things I love about this community is everyone is willing to share.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, and so then finally, my the final part of our conversation here that I want to talk about is, and I for anybody listening right now, and I think Jennifer hit it on the head. You are it's obvious why you were selected for the 30 under 30, the learning 30 under 30 experience last year. Tell us about what that was like. Like, was this something where you kind of raised your hand and do you have to be nominated by somebody? What was the process like for selection, and then what comes from it?
So, in all transparency and honesty, I wasn't going to actively apply because I was like, have you seen the Learning 30 under 30 list? Have anyone? Have you seen some of the people on that list? Because I've seen some of the people on that list and I was intimidated right off the bat. I was like, I can't. Do you see such and such and such and such? Did you know she worked at such and such? Like, I was really like, every excuse in the book, I literally threw it at myself. And what happened was my manager, she was like, why not? She was like, why not? I was like, well, because of such and such and such and such. And she was like, so what's the worst they can say? What's the worst that can happen? And she said, also, you have a lot of value to bring, right? And I think sometimes when you're in it, for me personally, I don't necessarily always see the value I bring. But when I had that conversation with her and she was telling me things, I was like, oh, I kind of sound kind of cool, like a little bit, And
Sweet.
And so I did it, and I really actually enjoyed their application process. I enjoyed the questions they asked because it was challenging for me, because I had to really think about myself, where I saw my career going, reflect on the past, think about how I want to contribute to this community. For example, I'm actually an introvert. I label myself as an introvert. I get so anxious talking in presentations, podcasts, anything that requires me to speak in a public setting. I get so nervous. However, the first time I ever spoke at a conference, which was DevLearn, I immediately just enjoyed the rush and the feeling. Like, yes, getting to that point took a lot. But once I was there and then people gave me feedback, they were commenting on LinkedIn, I was like, this is so cool. They're using what I created. as people who've taken any of my attended any of my presentations, I always try to create something
Mm.
that they can take with them, they can work with, they can have examples, and like seeing people like write me like, "Hey, I used your custom multiple choice in one of my what you did?
Wow,
Are you
cool.
kidding me?"
Mhm.
So those moments really I reflected on them, and so that's why I continually do this. Right, I continue to speak and um, put proposals in for conferences because I love teaching. It's one of my core values. Even though I've never been a teacher, it's something I strongly do. Like I love to do. I love training. Um, when one of my coworkers are like, "Hey, I don't know how to use this tool," or "Can you show me something in Storyline?" or have you ever done this?" I love doing that. And so going through the application for learning 30 under 30 was a really cool experience. I was nervous, but it was cool because it gave me the space and the time to think about where I see myself. And then I got the email. So they email you, right?
Mhm.
And your company backs you. I know some companies, some LED teams, from what I've heard, certain people get nominated through their company and they want you to apply. This didn't happen at my particular company, but I got the email and I ran it to my husband. Literally, I ran my whole computer. I was like, I need you to read this because I don't know if I'm reading what I'm supposed to be reading. And then I just kept like going back, like, let me read it one more time. Yeah, it does say congratulations in the subject line. Okay. Let me like I literally did that. And then because of COVID, we weren't able to actually go to
Mm.
the live conference, which was such a
Darn
bummer.
COVID.
I
Ugh.
know. I really wanted to like meet everyone, but they created a channel for us in Slack. We could collaborate that way. We got to meet some really cool people in the industry. David Kelly spoke to us. I was like, oh my
Wow.
god, we got to attend the conference. I was able to really take nuggets. I will say the only thing about attending a virtual conference is like it's virtual. So one of the things that I struggle with throughout during the conference is work in conference. Because if I was there, I can like I'm out, I'm gone.
Right.
But I will say it was one of like a really cool experience. Like getting to interact with other designers around my age that's they learning their different pathways to this field, seeing what some of them are doing because they are doing some crazy stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you created that?
Yeah.
I've had coffee talks with some of them. Some of them are telling me about like the cool Sims or like the animation. I'm like, you could do that? Like you did that. Okay, LaTarshia, I need to go Google. Like I gotta research. How do I do this? I need to go to YouTube. I need to learn this skill. Um, and I would say that's probably one of the best things I enjoyed. I love the networking. I love the opportunity that speakers came and spoke to us. I love the pieces of nuggets like having someone who's been in the field for 50 years say, you never stop learning.
Mm.
Don't ever stop learning.
Sure. Sure.
And
Mhm.
you're like, I'm never going to stop. YouTube and everything else and my networks and the podcast and all these different things that got me for the rest of my life. I am set. I am ready to go. And so if anyone's out there that's under 30 in this field and you're thinking about doing it, I recommend it. I do. And it's not so much, being labeled learning. It's just the fact that the experience you get is very valuable. The people you meet are really cool. And so yeah, I enjoyed that experience very much. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other experiences are out there for me.
Awesome. Well, I have a final question for you to wrap up our conversation here today. This has been an absolute delight, but it's the one that I ask everybody on the hot seat. And that is, you almost kind of stole my thunder there, which was, what are you looking forward to for the next 6 months to 12 months? Kind of near term future. Is there a shiny new object? Maybe there's a new tool. You seem to be very, very into the tools. Is there a particular learning that you're tasked with creating? Is there, I don't know, something outside this? It could be anything you want to give a shout out to that you're like, this is it.
Uh,
I'm psyched for this.
yes, Sims. I am psyched for Sims.
Mm.
Building them, understanding the content in them. That is next on my path. Also, moment of me learning and using the different tools that is available, like Slack. How can I create enablement in these different tools, right? Because everyone's in Slack or everyone's in Nest. Like, how can I create training that's tailored to that, that is easy to use, and that is something that we can track as well, because that's important. But that is next. I'm ready to tackle the next thing. I'm ready to tackle Sims. I'm ready to learn how it operates, how to build, and all of that good stuff. And then beyond that, I'm just excited for growing myself. Like, now that I've been at this company for so, like, not so long, but like
Long
for
enough.
over a year. I know, right? Over a year. I swear, when you work here, you've been here. If you've been here 3 months, you know, they already say you're a veteran at that point. I'm excited to see, like, where I go from here in this, like, what, you know, from this role, what's my next role in this company. I'm excited for that as well. So I don't know, but yeah, that's next on the docket for me.
Fantastic. LaTarshia Wooten, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show today. Your energy and your vitality and your knowledge are, you know, a clear indication why you got selected for the 30 under 30, but also I'm excited to follow your path as you continue to go forward. I also want to thank Andrea, Brian, Jennifer, and everybody else who chimed in today and helped us with this conversation. Make sure, if you are, got a little sales pitch here, you know, if you are interested in one of those virtual conferences, I happen to put one of them on. It's called the eLearn Success Series. You're not supposed to work while you're doing it, though. But next Wednesday, we are having our instructor session, and we're going to have 12 speakers that are talking to us about everything about being a great instructor, right? Our design session was in February about designing great experiences. This is how you create those experiences. We're going to be talking accessibility. We're going to be talking micro-credentialing. We're going to be talking the future of education with Thomas Corner, who's the head of the Moodle Users Association. Some great speakers. We're going to be talking with about accessibility. Did I already say accessibility? Anyway, neurodiversity. That's the one I wanted. Neurodiversity. So there's lots and lots of great topics about what do we do as instructors. But LaTarshia, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to following up with you in the near future.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you.